Thank you for tuning in to episode 22 of the Total Relationship Podcast. Okay, everybody, picture this. You're on the edge of the forest holding a map from the 1980s. You're told to navigate your way through, but every path has actually changed, making it every marker faded and making it harder. Your old map is useless. So imagine the forest is your client's financial future, and the map is the product-focused advice you're still clinging to. So in this episode, Tyson and I's goal is to help you shred that map. So let's get into it. Tyson, the tradition of breaking the mold of a product-centered advising is challenging, especially when the focus has been on selling products and advisors were incentivized to push those certain products. So take us back to your earlier experience in the industry where selling stocks, product pushing, and you kind of realized that model didn't resonate with you and your values and what you really wanted to do with clients. How did you get there and how did you find your solution?
How did I get there and how did I find my solution? I think I got there by luck in the sense that I apprenticed under an advisor who was the classic stockbroker that basically the value add. And again, when I started in my career, we were the only place you could call to find out what a stock was doing real time. The internet hadn't come on like it does now. Everything moved a little slower. We didn't even have email, for crying out loud. You actually just talked to everybody on the phone. Crazy.
Oh, maybe we need to actually talk about how wonderful our lives would be without email. Do we want to shift topics and do that, or?
Right. That'll be another podcast for another day. I reached a point when I started working underneath this senior advisor, and I was a junior advisor, especially as we started working on the transition of the practice where I was basically going to take it over and he was going to be retiring, that I realized that I had enough clients that I didn't have to sell. I didn't have to make more money. And that gave me the freedom to just start doing the job differently, and that's how this total relationship has evolved. And what I've realized is, and I can imagine it's hard for people to fathom that aren't in that paradigm. What I realized was my takeaway is that, wait a second, what I was selling and what clients were needing or wanting or seeking were really two different things. And as the industry has evolved, if you're listening to this and you're an advisor, what you did is you've swapped the sale or the product, and now you're calling it a portfolio, but it's still it's still not what the clients are seeking, and it's not the job that I think you can be doing, where you can be more profitable, you can make a greater difference for your firm and for yourself financially by giving clients what they really want.
Yeah. Well, and Tyson, one of the things you hit on is that you realized you didn't need to make more. And so part of that is understanding the value in contentment instead of focusing on the more is more. If I only had more, if I could make more, I could do more. Advisors shouldn't act as salespeople. They should really serve as a guide to help their clients align their financial choices with their life goals and not let it be driven by the money they're making off of the client.
Yeah, and if what I believe now, what I've proven to myself is if you can make a sacrifice in your own financial well-being in getting away from the sale and getting away from money now or commission now or being paid up front and pitching a product or getting some money from the client, and switch your process to a total relationship where you're seeking to basically earn the right to be their sole financial advisor over their entire situation, much like they have one accountant and one attorney and one family practitioner and one dentist. You will make a little less maybe for the first year, but it just starts compounding after that. That if you do this process, I'm a firm believer, if you do this process over, say, a 5-year period, if you'll do something that most advisors aren't doing over the next 5 years, you'll have what most advisors don't have, which is a flourishing firm full of clients that are happy because they're getting what they need and what they want, and you in every meeting aren't having to push a product or push a sale or worrying about how the portfolio is doing, because you're reintroducing yourself to the portfolio you sold them the last time you met with them, different from having some standards in place. And it's agnostic to the amount of wealth. That's the other crazy thing. I don't care if your prospective client has a few $100,000 or a few $1 million. This total relationship process is agnostic to wealth, and it's just amazing to me how counterintuitive it is in the world that we're in.
Yeah. Well, and I feel like media and then also the industry we're in often amplifies the fear of missing out or just the fear of the unknown. And that fear can drive poor decision making and undermine the client's long-term goals. And that can actually be driven into the advisor and the client, so they can kind of feed off of each other. So, Tyson, how do you address the fear or the fear of missing out for clients, or what would you say to the advisor who's kind of stuck in that mentality?
I think it's helping the advisor realize that how much you don't control your recommendations, how much you don't control what the market's going to do in the future, because no one knows the future. Not that there's not everyone out there trying to predict it or talk about it, and shift the control to what you actually can control, which is what the client's needs are. You can time a client's need, you can time a client's future cash flow, what they want to do in life, and when you and it's so simple and it's so easy to do, it almost doesn't feel like it's a value add in the financial industry where it's all about the money in the portfolio and the future rates of return of things. And yet, I have a case recently in my head where I sat down with a prospective business owner. The business is worth several $1 million, and the client themselves have been good stewards, and they themselves have several $1 million. And we knew that as we sat down, and yet as we sat down, we went through the process that we go through for clients to put the focus on them and what they want. And in that first meeting that we went through the total relationship process, this deck of cards that we lay out in front of them, and I could tell that the CEO business owner was kind of a little taken back, kind of like the almost the adolescence, childhood-like process that we were going through to flush things out. And yet his wife was getting a totally different experience, because I was leveling the playing ground where both could equally have input, where she was used to yielding to him making all these financial decisions, and yet she herself has all kinds of hopes and dreams and things that she's wanting to do in the future that her whole life up to that day was thinking about. And to see them be able to flush out priorities, seeing them to be able to flush out what they want to do into their future, what they want to do with their home, what they do with cars, what they want to do with their kids, what they want to do with their estate plan, and then shifting to what are they worried about with regards to taking care of their parents or taking care of their adult children or taking care of their health or health care or what they want to give while they're alive, and just this process, or what they worry about with regards to the markets. The whole meeting had nothing to do with the portfolios. And yet they volunteered that they had done a lot of this on their own. They had some accounts at Fidelity and Vanguard. It could be any custodian. I think it's interesting that one of them was Vanguard, because Vanguard does has been kind of positions themselves as their low cost do it yourself, and yet they themselves have created wonderful reports that they update every few years that factually shows the value a financial advisor can add. And they volunteered that coming out of COVID, Vanguard approached them and encouraged them to take and bring on an advisor from Vanguard to help them. And yet it was to help them with their portfolio. And they volunteered that they actually had gone through 4 financial advisors in 4 years, and that when they call in to their advisor, they're not so sure that advisor is still going to be there, or that advisor is even going to know who they are. But the advisor can talk about the portfolio. That advisor can talk about the positions they have, and why changes were made or not changes were made, or what should be changed or not should be changed. And that's just the difference. People aren't portfolios. People are hopes and dreams and goals and relationships and fears and emotions, and to advise into that brings all of the portfolios into one place. You earn the right to have all of this stuff. And most clients in the end, because I ask them, hundreds of them over the years, how much do you want to know about your portfolio? Other than we're doing everything we think we should be doing with it, how much would you like to know? And 99.99% of the time, it's nothing. What they want to know is that we know what they're going to do in the next 6 to 12 months and how is it going to be funded and where it's going to be coming from, or that they're on track to get to this retirement goal or to get to this financial goal that they need to have to accomplish these hopes and dreams and things that they want to do with this tool called money.
Yeah. Well, advisors get the opportunity to guide clients to make their decisions based upon the values and things that they have expressed that they want, and not let the clients risk of their behaviors throwing them off track. And that truly comes from building trust through relationships. And so at the heart of, I believe, at the heart of a successful financial advisory practice is trust. I've seen that over the last few years working here and seeing that through our team members. And it's not, and that trust wasn't built on talking about the portfolios like you just said and performance. It's about understanding the clients behind the portfolio. And as you grow your team, as you bring other people into it, you have to have a way to help transfer that trust by having those things documented, having that information there, so that next advisor who works alongside you can step right in and build that trust. So you're not like the prospect that we're dealing with that turn and burn of who's there, who do I know, that transfers. So Tyson, when you're building relationships with clients, and as we've kind of coined as through the total relationship approach, how do you use that? Like, I know you listen to client stories, you understand the question behind the question, but how did you kind of teach yourself that? And if you don't say one of the things that you always say to me, I'll fill in the gap.
Okay. Well, I think one of the ways is that instead of, I think the advisor sets, you had said the advisor has the opportunity, and I think the advisor is going to lead what's the focus and what matters. And if that advisor is leading with trying to communicate to the client what matters is a portfolio, I think that advisor isn't adding the value they could add if they put the focus on the person and not the portfolio, put the focus on the relationship and not the return of compared to what in the past of whatever's happened. And it's not, I don't question that advisors, I know for a fact many advisors that put the focus on the portfolio have relationships with the client, and the conversation in the client review or the client meeting or interacting with the client around that relationship is where they have things in common with, their kids attending the same teams, or you attended the same high school or college, or your family or your friends, or we have the same hobbies, or we like the same sports teams, and you talk about those things. That's not what I'm talking about. What I'm talking about is the relationship of the privilege of knowing in a granular fashion what that client wants to do in the next 6 to 12 months with what they have, what they want to do in the next 10 to 15 years, what they want to do at the end of their life, what they want to leave to people, and then speaking into how does the portfolio or how do finances help fund those things? Because in the end, that's where the rubber meets the road. And I think too many advisors are missing the opportunity that taking that relationship that you have of these friends and people that you're close to, and going going a little deeper into their life from again, where are they going to need money, or where do they have extra money, and where does that need to be, can allow you to advise them on everything, instead of you have something in common because you both are sports fans and you can talk for hours about who's what quarterback where and where they went to college and how they're doing or not doing, and yet feeling like you have to check the box by talking about your value out of this portfolio and not knowing that, or missing the fact that they may be needing to make this $50,000 or $100,000 purchase in the next 6 to 12 months, but you didn't flush that out. You had the relation, you have the groundwork to do it, but you don't because you're too busy focused on talking about a lot of social things that don't necessarily make a life-changing, life-improving decision that they're looking to be making with the resources that they have.
Yeah. So a couple of things. One of it is I know at the very beginning of establishing a relationship with a client, we use the discovery deck to help ask those questions to help get the client to identify one of the cards that really resonates with them. But one thing you often say is that you have to be quiet and let the client speak. They'll often tell you what their stories, their aspirations, their fears are so that you can then align your financial strategies with their life goals. And then you can offer them permission in the future to do the things that they want because you were able to listen to what they're saying and actually make the plan for that. It's not just about the numbers, it's about enabling the client to have a fulfilling life with the dollar amount that they have saved. Like you said earlier, it's not, it doesn't tie to their assets under management. Everybody can live a fulfilling life with what they've saved. And it's part of the advisor's responsibility to listen, make those adjustments in their strategy and have the cash ready for them when we know it's coming and give them the permission to do the things that they really want to do. How good are you at listening?
Well, I got much better when I realized that's where the value add could come from. I mean, I love public speaking. I love this podcast. I could talk to thousands of people, and I love that. But I realized in that client relationship and that client meeting, the job is to ask nothing but open-ended questions. And it's amazing. One of the questions in the beginning is that why are we here? What are you seeking from an advisor? What are you looking for? What are you looking for them to do? It's not telling them what we do. It's not telling them how we manage money. It's not telling them, the history of the firm. And in fact, what that deck of cards, that discovery deck does is let them discover what our value add is, not by me telling them, but by letting them experience letting them experience their opportunity to communicate what's important to them individually, then working with the couple to see how we prioritize the two individuals' goals into one overarching understanding of what the future is going to hold. And I tell them at the end of that exercise, it's like, this is what it is to be a client. This is what we're going to do on a continual basis. We may not use the cards now that we've identified what the issues are or what the topics are or kind of what the pattern of life that you're taking that you're going to try and live out in retirement when the incomes stop. It builds so much trust that it then allows us at the end of that meeting to basically send them home and tell them the next step, if you want to move forward now that we understand what you're trying to do with what you have, is for you to produce for us what you have. And so it allows us to ask for all the financial statements and the tax returns and the estate documents and the insurance policies and the bank statements and the debt statements to be able to then go and process without them there everything that they have based on everything they told us, which is so much different than the client that shows up and thinks, well, in the industry, it is very commonplace for the client to show up with some predetermined amount in their head that they're going to give the advisor to test them to see how they do, to see whether or not they want to move more money to them. And that's all product and portfolio focused instead of purpose driven and purpose focused and relationship focused, because what we end up realizing, and this is why we're so passionate about trying to get the advisor that puts the focus on their product or the portfolio or what they're selling today and shift this to the solution that you can provide, is that we'll end up with everything that they have because we care enough to understand everything they want to do with what they have.
So some closing thoughts for you. Challenge yourself to break free of the product-centered mold and actually focus on understanding your clients more deeply to help them achieve not just the financial security they think they're looking for from working with an advisor, but help them work towards having a meaningful and joyful life with the money they have saved. So Tyson, what other words would you like to leave our listeners with today?
Yeah, I think it's just try it. And I think one of the ways you can try it is you can try it by going back to one of the clients that you have that and ask them, hey, I want to take you through this process. I want to take you through this deck of cards and try and understand our situation a little differently before you bring out your performance report or your pie chart or this portfolio that you're so used to talking about that doesn't necessarily speak into these things, and experience for yourself what that feels like.
Yeah. Thanks, Tyson. I'm Kim Kokenauer, joined today by my co-host Tyson Ray, the author of The Total Relationship and CEO of Form Wealth Advisors. Thank you for tuning in to episode 22 of the Total Relationship Podcast. Until next time.